98 million Americans have prediabetes, and 90% of them don't even know it yet. My name is Kara, and I am a registered dietitian. In this video, I am going to give you the very quick and dirty on insulin resistance. Everything you need to know to get started reversing your prediabetes, but not so much that you get overwhelmed and confused. Prediabetes is why I became a dietitian. Today we're breaking down what insulin resistance really is, why it matters, and proven ways to reverse it. Science, not hype. So let's get started with what even is insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone that is made by your pancreas. It helps glucose, or sugar, enter your cells to make energy. If you're looking for a metaphor, we often say that your cells have doors on them, and those doors need keys in order to open. And insulin is the key. For the sake of extending this metaphor across the entire video, imagine that your cells are like a private club, and the club has a doorman that is sitting outside and needs a password to let you in. You are the blood sugar, and insulin is the password that the doorman needs to hear. There's some nuance to that, but that will be in a longer video. When you have insulin resistance, your body stops responding well to that insulin, and so it starts to create more. Now, to bring it back to our metaphor, it would be like if this club had an extremely loud DJ set happening inside, and the doorman just couldn't hear you as well. So in order to get in the door, you shout the password louder and louder. The end result is the same. You get into the club, you get out of the street, but you had to work a little bit harder to make it happen. When your body does that extra work, it's called compensatory hyperinsulinemia. Your pancreas is compensating for the resistance of your cells by creating more insulin. Now, imagine that doorman is an old, grizzled guy that has been standing outside of that club for years, and his hearing is just starting to go on top of the very loud music that's coming from inside. You can keep shouting the password louder and louder so that he can hear the message, but eventually you are probably going to give up. Maybe you end up just grabbing a beer and sitting in the street rather than entering the club. Now, more and more people are also yelling the password at the doorman, but they can't get in either because he can't hear them. And a crowd ends up forming outside of the club, just in the street, kind of loitering, hanging out, clogging up the street in front of the club. This leads to your group potentially causing all kinds of problems outside rather than getting into the club and having a good time. Now, this is how insulin resistance turns into prediabetes. Your body is no longer able to keep up by producing a little bit more insulin. And so you have more and more sugar that is just pooling in your bloodstream. Prediabetes is when there's maybe a small crowd of people outside of the club. As that crowd grows bigger and bigger, this is when it is turning into full-blown type 2 diabetes. And just like people loitering outside of a club, a small group is easy to deal with early intervention. But a huge group of people can cause systemic issues, and it's just a lot harder to reverse. Same thing in your body. Prediabetes is reversible with changes that we're going to talk about. Once you progress to full-blown type 2 diabetes, it is just a lot harder to walk yourself back. I said it in the intro and I will say it again here. More than 1 in 3 American adults has prediabetes, and 90% of them don't know it. That very certainly could be you. So now you understand how prediabetes and insulin resistance work. Let's talk about what causes prediabetes and insulin resistance. There are 7 major factors that contribute to developing insulin resistance and prediabetes. 2 of them are things we can't really control: genetics and age. You are going to get older, and the genetics you were born with, you are pretty much stuck with. We are going to talk about the 5 modifiable risk factors. The first one is having excess body fat, especially in your midsection, in your abdominal section. Now, males, men, and postmenopausal females, they have a higher likelihood of storing their excess calories in their midsection, as opposed to premenopausal females who store their excess calories in their legs, their thighs, their hip. And when your extra weight or your extra adipose tissue is stored away from your midsection, it's a little bit more protected. But that doesn't mean that premenopausal women have no risk of developing type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, prediabetes. They certainly do. So in addition to having more body fat and where that body fat is located, physical inactivity and or low skeletal muscle mass can increase the risk of developing prediabetes and insulin resistance. Only about 23% of American adults meet the physical activity guidelines, which is 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of high intensity exercise per week, plus 2 resistance exercise sessions. Now, number 3, high sugar, high glycemic index diets can increase our risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and that is because we use insulin to digest carbohydrates. The more we have to digest carbohydrates, the more insulin we'll have to use. Over time, that can cause our pancreas to get a little bit tired. Now, this video, this channel is never going to be the type of channel that strongly supports very low carbohydrate or a ketogenic type of diet, but we as Americans tend to be eating more refined grains and added sugars when we choose carbohydrates, as opposed to choosing higher fiber carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables. So we need to be shifting the carbohydrates that we eat rather than thinking we can't eat carbohydrates at all. Poor sleep is also a big contributor to the risk of developing insulin resistance and prediabetes. It's not just your brain that stays tired if you don't sleep enough. Your pancreas can also get a little lazy when you haven't gotten enough sleep. And so it might not release enough insulin. That sugar is going to pool in your bloodstream. When we don't sleep enough or we get poor quality sleep, we are also more likely to crave high energy, high sugar, high calorie foods to fill that energy gap that we're experiencing because we just didn't get enough rest. Chronic stress, which can include lack of sleep, also impacts our body's normal hormone balance. You've probably heard of the fight or flight mechanism. Well, the opposite of fight or flight is what's called rest and digest. If we are never fully getting into that de-stress hormonal state, we are just not digesting in the way that we should be, which means we are impacting how and when and how much sugar is actually getting into the appropriate cells. Now, research is also showing that our gut health can contribute to developing type 2 diabetes, but that is quite literally another video that I will link to down in the description. All right, let's get into the plan. Now, research says there are 4 things that you can do starting right now, starting today, starting with your next meal to reverse or prevent your insulin resistance or pre-diabetes. Everything else that people on the internet are trying to sell you are just bullshit. Let's talk about nutrition changes that actually reduce your risk of developing insulin resistance. To put it plainly, increase your fiber intake, reduce your added sugar intake, and reduce your saturated fat intake. The diabetes plate from the American Diabetes Association is a good visual place to start. It specifically says you want half of your plate to be non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of your plate to be grains or starches, and a quarter of your plate to be lean proteins. That could be meat, that could be dairy, fish, could be maybe beans, tofu, soy. Eat 3 to 5 meals per day that look like that diabetes plate. There are no foods that are off limit as long as the portion sizes and the combination fit that framework. If you're the type of person that likes numbers and goals, the recommendations here would be 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day, 2.5 cups of fruit, 2.5 cups of vegetables per day, and less than 40 grams of added sugar. Even less, honestly, because you are at an elevated risk of insulin resistance, I would maybe set your goal at 25 grams of added sugar per day. Max. If you need some inspiration or some ideas, you can download my fiber ebook. It is free. I will link to it down in the description. There are a ton of different recipes, no-cook recipes, even fast food orders, and you can combine any 3 meals in that ebook to hit your 25 to 35 gram fiber goal in a day. Now, research shows that working with a registered dietitian can increase people's success in improving their diet and lower their risk of developing chronic disease diseases. So if you have the ability to work with a dietitian, I highly, highly recommend it. If you don't have the ability to work with a dietitian, I would love if you subscribed to this channel. Maybe leave me a comment on one of these videos, and I will provide as many resources and answer as many questions as I can. The second thing you can do to start reversing your prediabetes and insulin resistance right now is build more muscle mass and take a 5-minute or more walk after every single meal. Both cardio and resistance training have been shown to improve insulin sensitivity. However, combined exercise, meaning both resistance and cardio exercise, have been shown to be most effective, and I recommend focusing on building muscle mass. Skeletal muscles don't require insulin to let blood sugar in. They only require movement. Rather than having a doorman outside of the door, it's kind of like an automatic sliding door where you move and it opens. The more muscle you have, the more sugar comes in. And the more muscle you have, then you move that muscle in a 5 or more minute walk after you eat can help you really pull sugar out of the blood. Number 3 is improve your sleep and develop a stress management system. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Even if you think that you are the type of person that, can thrive on 6 or few hours, maybe your insulin resistance is telling you you can't. When it comes to stress reduction, especially these days, it can be really hard, but even just a couple minutes of deep breathing or box breathing can be useful for your body to get into that rest and digest. Then, if you have the ability to access a therapist, that can also really help with stress management. And number 4, I'm going to give you a couple of supplements and medications to consider because I know that is everybody's favorite. Vitamin D has been shown to improve folks' insulin sensitivity, and most Americans are not getting enough vitamin D either through diet or through sun. And so a vitamin D supplement is typically recommended for folks with prediabetes or insulin resistance. Another supplement is berberine, which is part of traditional Chinese medicine and has been shown to lower blood sugar levels. GLP-1 receptor agonist medications like Ozempic and Wegovy, maybe even tirzepatide medications like Zepbound or Mounjaro, have also shown to improve insulin resistance and prediabetes, but they are absolutely harder to access and more expensive. Now, research shows that reversal of insulin resistance and prediabetes can begin in 3 to 6 months' time. So it's not going to happen overnight, but with consistency, it also doesn't have to take forever. Lifestyle intervention programs like the National Diabetes Prevention Program have also shown really great success for people in reversing their prediabetes and insulin resistance. So I will link to the NDPP website where you can see if there is a program in your area that you are a candidate for and can join. Last thing I'll say here is rather than jumping in and making it as difficult as possible, start with small, sustainable changes. If you found this helpful, I would love if you subscribe to this channel, maybe share it with 2 friends. 1 in 3 folks has diabetes, could be any of you. Now, if you're struggling with your blood sugar, your body weight, maybe PCOS, sleep apnea, to the point that you don't think that lifestyle intervention like this is going to be enough, I highly recommend you check out this video, which is my GLP-1 medication masterclass, where I talk all about things like Ozempic, how they reduce your risk of developing all kinds of chronic diseases, and that might be useful for you if that is a journey that you think you want or need to go on. Don't forget to download that free fiber ebook, and thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.